Good morning, good morning. Hello, Rachel. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. It's going to be fun.
Yes, I'm having an occupational work from home issue. I've got a little dog who is crying and throwing a bone underneath me the second that I go on air with this, but we'll work with it. So thank you everyone for joining us today. It looks like we've got about 35 people. Get some more over the time, and of course we always record these sessions so that you're able to watch them again any other time. So thanks for joining us today. We're going to have a live Q&A with the lovely Rachael from Inlighten Photography on deposits, installments, and postponement policies. I've not had enough coffee. Easy for me to say. So for everyone who is joining us this morning, I'm going to. Puppies, right? If you can't tell, we are dialing in this morning from the lovely gloomy Melbourne, where we're only allowed outside 1 hour a day. So for everyone who has joined us, if you could just pop in the chat window your name and what your business is, that would be really great. So it gives a better idea. Make sure that we're tailoring our conversation a little bit more towards you. So, Rachael.
Hey.
I've heard so many amazing things. If you don't know who Rachael is, Google Inlighten Photography. Google Rachael Enlighten on Google as well, and you can see her amazing personal website that goes into all of the things that she does. I've got a sausage dog for adoption in about 2 minutes. So Rachael is a spreadsheet lover, a photographer, but crazy passionate about printing photos and an absolute expert in behind-the-scenes iPhoneographer.
Oh, I love selfies. It's ridiculous.
Teach me everything.
Filters,
so of course, that's all the tricks. I heard it's angles as well.
Yeah.
I have so many things to learn. So of course, Rachael knows the importance of a great selfie and is amazing on the Instagram stories. If you don't follow Inlighten Photography on Instagram, I highly suggest you do it. It's really, really great content on there. And so Rachel's role is, the head of Inlighten Photography with her partner. And her role is working with clients to guide them through an amazing experience. And let me tell you, from the look that I've had on the Inlighten Photography website, they have some of the best ideas I have ever seen. One really, really stood out to me. Such a great idea and kind of value add to the photography business for weddings is having a gold class option. So the wedding party goes on, and Rachael, you can talk a little bit more to this as well. I think it's such a beautiful idea, so luxury, and really, after the wedding is over, then what?
Well, it's actually funny because we've been in business for about 18 years, and some of those things that we just take for granted that we do, I kind of didn't realize that people don't do them anymore. So afterwards, once we've photographed a wedding, we always have our couples, you can see I'm in the studio here, we always have our couples come in and they always sit down, they watch their photos, we give them champagne, and they get to relive the day. And then suddenly, we weren't even mentioning this to couples anymore as a reason to book us. It was just, oh yeah, that's just, we've always done that. Doesn't everyone do it? And then when we realized that no one else is doing it, we're like, okay, well, how can we take this next level? So yeah, we found this gorgeous little cinema. It's like this 1920s, just beautiful cinema. It only has 56 seats, all really old fashioned. And so we can hire it out. It's actually called the Golden Age Cinema. And if you, get a gold class package, then we'll actually hire the cinema exclusively for you. It has this beautiful Art Deco was the word I was looking for before, bar where you can go and we give you champagne and drinks beforehand, and then you can either sit in there and have a full cinema experience all to yourself, or you can bring your family in and keep the party going.
That sounds so amazing. It was almost another reason to get married.
It's really cool. The day goes over so quickly.
I know, and it's just, people spend so much time and effort into, finding the right photographer for a wedding because they want to really cherish those memories forever, and getting to kind of see them for the first time in that situation would just be so incredible. So that is amazing. Rachael has already also been featured in bridal blogs, as well as Vogue Brides, Bizarre Bridal, Cosmo Bride, and the Today Show. That ain't bad. Makes sense that Inlighten Photography is the winner of New South Wales Photographer of the Year in 2018 and 2019.
Wow.
And sounds like maybe another one just around the corner as well. Fingers crossed for you.
If it gets to go ahead this year, oh my gosh.
Surely they can still do it online.
Oh, let's hope so.
I mean, the content's still there. You've done all the hard work. Shouldn't be taken away from it. So, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Rachel to talk about what we're here for: deposits, installments, and postponement policies.
All right. Okay. So basically, well, let's jump in with, you mentioned, and it's kind of a weird thing, my love of selfies. And it's really, really weird. In the last 2 days, this has just happened. I've had 2 people call me and just go, "Are you okay? I haven't seen you on your socials for a while. And you haven't been doing anything. Just want to check in with you, make sure you're feeling okay." And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, one of the reasons that we do like to take couples behind the scenes on a wedding day, and one of the reasons that we like to put a face to the name, is so that when couples come in, they'll usually tend to meet with me. So I actually don't photograph myself. We've got 3 photographers, Dean, Jared, and Tim. And when they come in, they'll be meeting with the photographer who's going to be shooting on their day. But I'm the one that takes the money and does that thing where it's like, right, do you want to, put the credit card down? So by letting them feel as though they get to know me before they walk in the door, it really helps with that deposit collection. And I think that's something that's coming across really strongly for us at the moment. We're still continuing to, we might not have quite as many inquiries coming in, but we're still hitting that 60% conversion ratio. So once they do walk in the door, they are still, we are still maintaining bookings. One thing that, and it's something that I learned off another fabulous podcaster called Jenna Kutcher. She has a great podcast as well. It's called the Know, Like, Trust Factor. And by putting your face out there on social media, as well as just your work, then people get to know who you are as a person. And then by seeing behind the scenes and seeing the effort that goes into creating these amazing photos and the love and attention that you put into a couple's wedding, then they get to like you. And by the time they walk in the door, they feel like they know you, they feel like they like you, and then it's much easier for them to trust you and place a deposit. So, excuse me, all of that's kind of happening before our couples even walk in the door. And that's definitely making that deposit collection stage a lot easier for us now. I think as well, one of the things that I've always been a big believer in, and we're doing extra strong at the moment, is, you mentioned how if I do my job right, I guide our couples through the process with us. And part of that is letting them know that things are really normal. So it's normal to come in and meet your photographer and make a booking, rather than saying to them, "Do you want to book us?" And oh, would you like to commit to us? And do you want to book in your wedding? I always make sure that even if they've booked us or are coming in for an inquiry online or an email, I still have a phone call conversation with them in advance. And I also let them know, we always have stories that we'll chat about. And one of mine that I always say is that, we've been in weddings for 18 years. And back in the day, couples used to have to go around and visit multiple photographers before they could make a decision. But these days, most of our couples have already seen a lot of other photographers' works online. They've already had a chance to get to know the other packages out there. So for most of our couples, it's really easy to make a decision when they come in on the day. So again, instead of saying you should make a decision, one of the techniques that I'll tend to use to help guide them through and let them know that it's okay to place a deposit, and that it's easy, and that that it's something that everybody does, because for us it is. Most of our couples, once they've met, especially because when they come in with us, they're meeting the photographer who's going to be on their day. And dates are like nuts at the moment. Like I'm honestly saying to people, like I'm really upfront with people, and I'm like, guys, I'm not normally so crazy about dates, but right now people are shifting dates. They're moving dates. There's fewer dates available because everyone's squashing their wedding into a shorter period of time. dates and that date urgency is definitely stronger than ever before. So if you can just let people know that it's normal and guide them through the process, and then instead of saying, do you want to book, say most of our couples choose to book at this appointment so that they don't miss out on the photographer that's available on their day. So having that trust factor before they even walk in the door, they feel like they've seen my face, and hopefully they've seen a lot of our work. I've had a phone call with them before they even walk in the door. I've told them, go out there and see what's available online, check out other people. That way, once you meet your photographer, you're able to confirm your booking. My other favorite phrase that I like to use for confirming deposits is the best next step from here. So again, rather than saying, would you like to book your wedding in? I'll tend to say the best next step from here is to confirm your booking by popping down a deposit. Would you like to pop that on card, or would you like to pop that, like bank transfer, whichever way. The best next step from here, the best next step from here, the best next step from here. That's like my blah, 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 I say all the time, because that makes people feel as though they're moving forward and they're doing the right thing. So they're probably my two big things. Like, yeah, most of our couples choose to, and the best next step from here. And if you can blend those into what you say along with the trust factor you've already developed, you'll find that getting that deposit is still possible. And we were doing it over Zoom as well. I really like, even during our Sydney lockdown, we booked a ton of weddings over Zoom.
That's so fantastic. I think there was three big things that I picked up from that, and I think number one is be a human from the social media, and you're so personable. Good morning, good afternoon, how everyone's day's going. You show that you care, and you show, sometimes you show that you're infallible as well. And this is what goes on behind the scenes, because particularly with photography, all people are just thinking end game. This is what my wedding album is going to look like. Yeah. But what about all the care that's taken all the way along, of the time that you're putting into it? I think we've heard quite a few times that that people are saying, oh yeah, I'm only at the wedding for 3 hours. Yeah. But there's 20 hours of work that I'm doing leading up to that point that people don't see. And that's why they find it more difficult to ask for deposits as well. So if you're able to find a channel where you can showcase the fact that, these are the things that we're doing to kind of help get you to the big day, help get you to that end goal that you're looking for, then maybe the asking for that deposit is a less difficult conversation. Because I think being human is so great.
Okay.
You go.
Oh, definitely. And no, sorry about that, Dal. Probably the one other tip, and this is definitely something that tends to be more true with women, is if you are someone who struggles to ask for a deposit, and you are someone who struggles to talk about money, it's one of the reasons that I actually act as a client manager, because we found that when our photographers were, we wanted to choose the photographers who worked for Inlighten because they were amazing photographers, not because they were good salespeople. Mm-hmm. And that was something we realized really, really early on, that someone who was getting really good sales wasn't necessarily the best photographer. So we wanted to split that role out. If you are someone who does need to do sales and does need to talk about money, and it's not something you're comfortable with, sometimes, especially for women, there can be a tendency to put it to go upwards when you're talking, and then put a upwards tonality on your voice.
The intonations at the end, yeah.
And it makes you sound not very sure about what you're saying. So if you are someone who's struggling, try and really focus on putting that downwards intonation on your voice. So if you are saying the package cost is $5,000 or the package cost is $5,000, one of those makes you sound like you're questioning yourself and you're not sure if you're worth it. And the other one makes you sound like you're an expert and you do believe in what you're saying. So that would be another piece of advice for getting a deposit across the line as well.
I absolutely love this. If you get absolutely nothing else out of today, that is such a good one. And do you know what? I don't think that maybe it predominantly applies to women, but I think that's to everyone as well. You've got to really back yourself, and when you're asking for that. And I think it's great, and that kind of comes into being the human, but you can't be maybe your entire authentic self. You kind of have to put a bit of a business face on it at the same time as well. It's great. Another thing I picked up from what you were saying a little bit earlier, Rachel, was being honest with availability. I think that's great. That puts a little bit of time pressure around moving moving that next conversation forward, and then that followed up by the next best step from here is to you're guiding them along the way instead of leaving, the decision is always, at the realm of the couple. But you're kind of gently guiding them to the next step in that process, which gets them closer to putting a deposit, and then, having you as they're on the big day.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, it's so real at the moment. We're getting couples who are coming in and seeing us unable to make a decision straight away. And then by the time they come back, the date has gone. So it's like, it really is. The best next step from here is, in some cases, not even to worry about which package you're going to go for yet. We provide a lot of pricing information. So you've got all the information there. It's just about securing the date.
Awesome. Now that you brought up pricing, a question that I have, which I think might be relevant to everybody else as well, is with your pricing, at what point are you releasing that? Is that something that you make publicly available on your website, or is that something that at what point during the conversation with couples do you have the pricing conversation? Because it is generally, we find in our research that it's people will choose on Easy Weddings, people will go price-based first.
Yeah, I think that's where the thing I love about social media is that it's where you get your inspiration from. And so that will get us to maybe your top 10 choices. But then it's when you get to your directories, it's when you get to your other areas, that's when they start to make decisions. So that's why you need both elements in a great marketing mix. Price is definitely very important. And for us, it is really important that when they come into our studio, and I'm just going to do these ones again, it's really pretty.
It's and I know so beautiful. I've got
one of those things that we really
apartment wall.
It's one of the things that we really define as something that sets us apart. So it's not just we shoot on the day, give you a download link and say goodbye. It's actually that you'll come in, every time you come in, you have a wonderful experience. And that's why we get more than 50% of our couples come from word of mouth. So once people come in the door, then suddenly they can get to appreciate everything that goes into one of our packages and the level of care and all the different elements that go into the service that we provide. And also why that's important. Having said that, if they only have a budget of, let's say, $2,000 to spend on photography, unfortunately, just with how much we are at capacity, we're not able to service people at that price range. And I don't want to waste their time. I don't want them to waste our time, both ways. I will more so give people a range. So when we don't have the pricing on our website. Once they put in an inquiry, they do get an automatic response. So I totally appreciate that when people are trying to plan their wedding, they can be doing it at 3 a.m, they can be doing it at whatever time, and they want to get a little bit of information back. So what I don't want them to do is to come to our website, get that piece of pricing, and then leave. I'm happy for the pricing to be an exchange for their email address. So then what we'll do is once they have given us their email address, then the pricing comes straight out to them. And that gives me the opportunity to then follow up with them as well. On the inquiry form that we have on our website, we ask for their phone number, but we don't have it as an essential part. We found that when we had it as a required field, we got no inquiries anymore, like it just sunk to zero. But if you put it as an optional field, often people will put in their phone number, and then I can then follow up and have a conversation. And it's so funny. It's like the biggest, strongest thing that we do is like so many people go, they'll just say, oh my gosh, no one else has called me. Thank you so much for taking the time to help me with this. And then all we do is chat them through it. So they'll then have the price range of packages, so they can see that a smaller package with us is like $4,750. A larger package is getting up around the $6,000 mark. And so when I chat with them on the phone, I'll give them the information and say, look, to be honest with you, our packages start at $4,750. We always include 2 photographers. We always include all of your high resolution files. We always include a beautiful album that gives you something real and tangible and a memento of the milestone of your wedding, something real. that's a little bit on the small side for depending on like the style of your day, how many hours you've got. And most of our couples probably choose to end up closer to the $5,500–6,000 mark, but it's completely up to you. It's wherever you feel most comfortable. So now they're kind of getting that feeling that, okay, it's around the $5,000–6,000 mark. And if that's where they're at in terms of a budget, then they'll come in. And then at the start of my meeting, I'll always say to them, guys, so you got the email with the pricing information in advance. Fantastic. And so I'm going to take you through all the items at the end, but the main part is getting to know your photographer, making sure we match you, because you already know that we're within your budget. So then that way they're then going, okay, well, I've actually already got past that part of can I afford it? Then the question is Inlighten right for me? And if we are, then we're sort of one step closer to closing that sale as well.
Amazing. Sounds so great. So can you tell me a little bit about particularly your experience during the times of restriction when you can't get people to come into the studio?
Yep.
Has that changed how you're contacting people? Of course, they can't come in and see. Are you kind of doing video calls and giving them a tour of the space? Are you struggling with those conversations about getting deposits as well?
It's really weird. I think that because, and I can see Maria asked the question too about being honest about availability. With it, because we were having so much date shifting, we didn't, especially in the early days, it wasn't hard to get people to still continue to confirm their booking. We've done everything on Zoom. It's actually been really, really surprising. I did not think that you could do the meetings via Zoom, but we would have our photographer who would be on one chat like we're doing here. I'd have the couple. We had some couples who were actually self-isolating separately, so we would have 4 of us going through the
party,
going through the meet. Oh yeah. and we continue to make it fun too. So even though I couldn't give them a glass of champagne here, I always made sure that I told them they had to have a glass of wine ready to go before we started. And then at the start, we'd all do a little cheers and, keep it really fun and personable. And then we actually did exactly the same thing we've always done. So all those things that I would say at the start, which is you've had the package information emailed to you, we've chatted on the phone prior to the call. We'd bring the photographer on who would then show their work. They would talk to, and explain why they took the photo they did, what they were looking for, all the reasons that the photos, and educating our client. And then I basically would have this really horrible light that was so unattractive on my face. So I'd switch it on for 5 seconds, and then I'd hold up the albums to show the texture of the leather and the gold foiling. And you can kind of make a joke of these things. Everyone, okay, I've got to turn the harsh light on for a minute, show all the detailed texture, and then show the albums, and then I'd put the harsh light off again and be talking again. So I think all the same, exactly. The meetings all ran exactly the same. It was actually kind of cool.
I think that's so great, because you're still creating the experience that people are looking for, because the whole process of planning a wedding can be stressful, but it should also be a great memorable time as well. And you want to have a good experience with any wedding supplier that you meet. And I think that extends way beyond weddings. Anytime that you want to hire someone for a service, you want to feel good about that, and creating a nice memorable moment from the get-go is really easy to do, and it's such hugely impactful. I think it's just amazing. And I don't see why we can't get everyone in the industry and in the businesses. I know that Zoom is free for up to, I think, 40 or 45 minutes. So getting a free account on Zoom and reaching out to potential clients that way, I think, make the most of what you've got. Use what you've got in front of you. I think it's an absolutely roaring idea. I love it.
No, it's good fun. It is. I think that's the thing. You got to make it fun.
Yeah, it's just part of being that memorable human experience, right?
Yeah.
Particularly for photography, you don't want to kind of go add to cart online.
No, well, look,
because
we're trusting
it's
us.
such a huge thing, and it's a big trust thing as well. Like,
Huge trust
couples
thing.
are putting huge trust in you to make sure, and no pressure. I'm sure you know this already.
Oh no, look, and I think as well that the thing that I try and remember, so because we have been doing this for 18 years, we try really hard to remember that this might be the literally 2000th wedding interview that I've done, but for them, this is their first. And so we always serve sparkling wine, like champagne, and we make it fun because for them, this is their first wedding. And I try really hard to always remember that for them, this is like, oh my God, I'm getting married. So when you give them a glass of champagne, they go, cheers, and they're excited. And that's all a part of it.
Yeah, I love it. I really, really love it. And so let's move on to installments.
Yep.
If you could give some ideas about your experience, I think particularly in this kind of odd period where there's a lot of restriction in different states and it's kind of varying. You know, Victoria's very restricted right now. I think South Australia has had some more reductions put in this week, and I think unfortunately some of the other states are going to feel a bit of a pinch in the next couple of weeks as well. Yeah. So some ideas, maybe some stories about some difficult conversations or just good templates.
No, for sure. Well, I actually just saw Liam's question there as well. What percentage of your quote is a deposit? So I basically, I'm very much at the first inquiry stage, all about confirming the booking. I want to get the booking. So, and I also want them to go with the package as big as I can get it. So I don't really want them to have to pay more of a deposit because they've gone for a bigger package. So I always just do a flat $1,500 deposit for that. Now, normally we then say that your balance is due about 6 weeks prior to the wedding. And that's when they come in for their final meeting and go through it. That's when they go through the final details of the day. Often they'll change the number of hours they think they need, all those sorts of things. And then we finalize the package and take it from there. In terms of installments, it's actually something that we're thinking about doing at the moment, where potentially if we did want to increase our cash flow, we could start asking for people to pay a percentage of their package sooner rather than wait until the 6 weeks prior. There's a couple of things. If you are thinking that this is a good idea, do keep in mind that your deposit, you probably have it written into your contract that that's non-refundable, but how, and you can probably justify that too. If you do ask for a higher amount up front, I then struggle to know how that would be non-refundable because you haven't really provided any more service. So be very careful with that because you then are holding people's money that you potentially will need to refund if they decide to not go ahead with their wedding or downscale it is the danger there too. If you traditionally get all of your money after, you could always start to do an installment beforehand as well, which I would strongly advise. The main thing when you're changing your payment arrangements is to explain it as a benefit to them. So if you say to them, okay, the installments, because of COVID, the installments are now going to be 10% deposit, 45% now, 45% 6 months out, 45% day before, whatever it is. And that's what it's going to be because of COVID, or that's what it needs to be because I've decided to change the rules. That's going to sit really badly with your couple. And I'm certainly someone who wants to maintain a good relationship. I've worked really hard to get this couple and I want them to refer me to other people. And there are often lots of opportunities for increasing your sale along the way. I'm a very, very big believer in an incremental sale. So that every time you meet them, there's always a chance to show them something new, something else that can serve them and help them have a better wedding day. So there's always that opportunity to increase your sale. So I don't want to be scaring them off and making them think that I'm not going to possibly be there for their wedding or that I'm struggling at any way at this moment in time. So I would rephrase it and go with more of how it's a benefit to them. So say during this time of COVID, we found that a lot of our couples are finding it very hard to pay all of their suppliers at the one time, about 4 weeks before their wedding. As you can imagine, everyone suddenly wants all their bills paid at once. So what we've been recommending to couples is to make it easier for you. Maybe you'd like to do a smaller installment earlier and then the final balance 4 weeks before your wedding. So put it in terms that it helps them as opposed to benefiting you. Does that make sense?
That makes 100% sense to me. And I think for someone who loves to pay for things that I buy on the internet all the time in small installments, because it takes the pinch away, and I feel less guilt for maybe overspending. Or just spending more than I have at that point in time. So I think that is just such a brilliant idea, and it really does help. So when you're budgeting for a wedding, I'm sure that you're continually saving, kind of almost up until the date, because your budget always just generally blows out just a little bit. And it's human nature, but I think having the option there to go, oh, you know what, maybe this is a little bit more than what we originally thought or what I have available right now. But if I can split it up into 3 or 4 smaller chunks, it's very feasible for me to do, and I feel great about that.
Yeah, that's perfect. And I think that's a really good way to do it.
I think it's really, really great. So Chris has made a comment on the chat wall. He said, I've been promoting installment payments for a long time, and it helps make the price a lot less intimidating. And it is. That kind of big lump sum can be quite intimidating. And even depending on the size of your deposit, it's a bit of a chunk at the end. And that's kind of extra stress on the couple who are already kind of got a million things going on in the background. So I think that is so fantastic. And then finally, before we get to quite a few questions that people have been sending me through the week, which are really, really great, thank you for those, is postponement policies. Is this something that you kind of make public? Is this something that we should be putting on websites, that we should be very upfront with about couples as we're first having conversations with them?
I think the main thing to think about this is, sometimes I'll talk to photographers and they'll be like, right, I'm writing this into my contract and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this. When you think about it, you can have it there in your contract, but you also need to think about, what are you actually willing to take to court and actually take legal? Because at the end of the day, you can say, right, well, this is my policy, but are you actually going to legally enforce it? So for us, we don't want to create bad blood with our couples. I'll give you a wonderful example of one great result we've had. We've postponed about 40 weddings. We had not one single person cancel. And in fact, we had one person who did go to take us legally. And they were like, right, this is what in their scenario, they had actually paid the full amount of their wedding, and their wedding was meant to happen at the end of March. So I was like, 100%, I totally get it. We need to refund you the majority except the deposit. So we were sort of having this conversation about what was the right thing to do, and lawyers got involved. At the end of the day, I just refunded straight back to them exactly what we felt that we owed. And we just said, look, we have no intention of doing the wrong thing by you. This is where we stand. And I've sent everything straight back to you, like a large chunk of money back to them. And they ended up saying, actually, we've decided to postpone instead of cancel now. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's really good. That's really good. So I think with postponement policies, there has been, we try really, really hard to do the right thing by our couples. And it's something that's kept us in the industry for a really long time. Keep in mind as well that your policy doesn't have to be forever. So at the moment, we're being super flexible. If people want to postpone dates, if they want to move to next year because of COVID, even weddings that are not happening until November, December, and they're wanting to move to next year, we're accommodating that right now. How long that will continue for, I don't know. And then as well, people who are booking now, we have written into our agreement saying that if you need to change the date due to COVID restrictions, then we're happy to move the date for you at no charge. So we don't charge to do any of that. And I really, really strongly feel that you just need to consider the goodwill of your company in addition to the loss of $1,500 or whatever your deposit is. Because you think about you know, if you go hard with someone, and I've seen this happening to a lot of people in the industry recently, where they have held strong with their deposit, or they've held strong with their legal agreements. I spend so much money marketing, and if I was to take, you know, what I lost in a deposit and consider that to be a marketing expense instead, that has kept good branding around me and meant that they then refer me to other people, there's a long play there as well. Does that answer?
Absolutely, yeah. And so I think kind of the word of mouth is still, it reigns true as a general view for the work you've done, but also in the way that you're dealing with the changes at the moment that are largely out of everybody's control. Really, and I think that can often be worth more than the amount of money that you would lose in a deposit, whether it's a full amount or a partial amount. That's a review that you can't buy. You can't buy that kind of advertising space. So I think it's super important.
What would you do if you were not available on the new date in a postponement situation? For us, we would, and I'm sorry, I don't know what industry you're in, Liam. For us with photographers, we've always promoted ourselves as being Inlighten Photography. So we have always been a team of amazing photographers, and even like I would probably bring on another photographer on that date, and then I would also bring the couple back in, and then they would meet that new photographer. Because, for example, in a lot of cases, we've shifted, so they were going to have Dean shoot their wedding. Dean's now not available, so they're going to have Jared shoot their wedding. So in that case, they'll come in, meet the photographer, build that rapport all over again, make sure they feel really good. If in the case of me having 3 booked solid, I do have past employees that I would go to. I have other photographers that I trust and think are amazing, and I would bring them on board to shoot the wedding, and again would go through the same system when they bring it in, and where the client would come in, build that rapport, make sure they have that personal connection with the new photographer.
Sure, I think in Liam's situation, that might be a little bit different because he is in music. So whether like he is kind of the sole entertainment, I think in that case you would probably have to. And I'm sure that you would have some contacts within the industry that you could recommend to take on that date for you, and hope that in time that the favour would be returned.
And I think as well, even not in that case scenario, I was even thinking myself the other day, you know, like what if someone had to self-isolate one of our shooters that day. So I was even thinking about reaching out to some other photographers in the industry and also letting them know that, you know what, if something happens the day before a wedding, we're here for you too. And then maybe we can build up a network of people that we can help each other out, so that if the responsible thing to do is not to attend that wedding, that we can, amongst ourselves as a group, we can have a backup plan in place. So yeah, whether you reach out to other celebrants who you can work together and team up with, and do something like that.
Absolutely, and I think like that's one of the reasons that we run the wedding industry social group on Facebook. Which is going to change into a public group shortly, so that more people can get access to it. If you need some help, or if you have a question, post a comment on there. If you can't attend a date that you're maybe double or triple booked for, if you're that lucky, then that's a great place to ask people. So we've got.
Also, I saw Chantal asking as well, and it's a hard question. Hi, Chantal. Are you keeping the deposit if they want to cancel the wedding, not postpone? How do you deal with aggressive clients? I think it's really, really important to do it on the phone, not via email or via text or anything like that. And then have a think about, I always actually practice what I'm going to say beforehand, and I also think about what is the outcome that I want to achieve. So for me at this moment in time, it's probably to keep as much goodwill as possible and to make the amount that I need to refund as minimal as possible, because right now, God bless, times are tough for everybody. So if it was me, I would probably go into the scenario and say, and talk to the couple and say, hey, look, I'm sure that you can appreciate, I like, see it acknowledge it from their point of view as well. So I would start by saying, I can appreciate that you have gone through a lot right now, and you probably have a large number of suppliers that you need to have this same conversation with. And I can appreciate that that there's a lot at play going on here. And what I want to do is see if we can come to a resolution that works best for both of us, because I'm sure that you can appreciate as well, these are unprecedented, difficult times for everybody right now. So what I would suggest is that, and I can appreciate that you want to make sure that you get as much refunded as possible. In this case, I would probably get an agreement in place and come to some kind of a win-win scenario and say, if you can, would you be happy with maybe a 50% refund? If you're, I would potentially hold strong on a non-refund of a deposit. Having said that, if they're an aggressive couple who is likely to take this onto social media, I would refund it, just because I just sometimes, where your attention goes is where your energy flows. I don't want to spend my whole time losing my energy and my mojo, getting bogged down with someone that I can just say, oh my God, just please, let's end this. And then I can go back to building my business. And I think that's super, super important, that you don't waste time, like a whole week worried and stressed over someone, that you could actually just go, you know what, I can end this right now. So say to them, look, I can appreciate that there's a lot going on for you right now, and that you need to get, you're hoping to get refunds from a large number of suppliers. May I suggest that we come to some kind of arrangement? If you're happy to accept a 50% deposit refund, I'll transfer it to your bank account right now. And I've had that work before, where it's like, yep, great. I just want, they want to end this too. They don't want to go into like this massive, but they also are in that position where it's hard for them too, you know? So right now it's hard for both of them. So if you can come to a resolution where you can not refund the deposit, then that's definitely an ideal outcome. But yeah, these are times when my rules are a little bit going out the window, and I'm negotiating to keep my energy up, which allows me to grow my business rather than getting bogged down dealing with someone that I can just make it end.
Yeah. I think
the one caveat I'll add to that too is that if you come to an agreement, do get them to sign something that says that they won't go on social media as part of that arrangement. Where I have had that happen to us once, where I thought I bent over backwards for this couple, and the second that I thought that I had done everything, I then got slammed on socials, and I was like, oh, come on, I just gave you everything you wanted. But I didn't get them to agree to that beforehand. So that's just the little.
I think that is an amazing point. You just have to cover yourself, because unfortunately when people talk, it's outside of their social groups and it's on the social medias now. So what you said actually about having these hard conversations is a really good segue into one of the questions that we were sent through earlier in the week, is having a script for different scenarios a good idea? And I think particularly with difficult conversations, for myself, I know that if someone is very aggressive, I could get a bit flustered, and I move off track very quickly, and at the end they lead the conversation instead of me, which can happen. So what are your thoughts on having those different scenarios kind of plotted out?
Yeah, absolutely. You definitely want to have a script in place and practice it. I have done many times practicing looking in the mirror or in the car, talking to myself.
Do you do power poses?
Not quite power poses. No. I'm more just like practicing the words that I want to use. So I'm a very big believer in, as I said before, showing that I acknowledge what they're experiencing. And I don't mean just saying I understand, because no one, like you say, oh, I understand, that doesn't really cut it. It's actually thinking about going to that next level and thinking about, you know what, they're doing this with 12 other suppliers. Shit, that's got to be hard, excuse me. You know, it's got to be tough for them. Yeah, that's all right. Is it midday yet? Can I have a wine?
Yeah.
Okay, almost.
It is somewhere. Happy hour somewhere.
Yeah, so I think the main thing is just to really come and try and see it from their point of view as well. Have in mind what your goal is. So what is the outcome that you want to achieve, and be realistic with it. You know, okay, maybe the outcome should legally be that you don't have to refund the deposit, but really our outcome right now is to minimize our cost and maximize our goodwill. So with that, if that is what our goal is, then where are we prepared to settle, and what are we happy to do, and then go into the phone conversation with that goal in mind, and try and come up with a win-win outcome.
Awesome. So we've got a couple more questions that have popped up in the chat window. Natalie and Brendan have both asked, how do you handle a couple that postpones multiple times? Particularly when you could have worked at other weddings on those days, and it's kind of really throwing you into a bit of a spin about where you should be spending your time.
Yeah. At this stage, because we haven't had any, it's hard, isn't it? Look, at the moment, I'm being more flexible than I've ever been in 18 years. Like, we've been through the GFC, we've done all these, sorry, I'm banging the table here. We've been through, you know, a lot of really tough times before, but I've never been as flexible as I am right now. And all I can say is that it's paying off in spades for us. So we've got more planners that are referring us. We've got other people in the industry who are commenting and saying, wow, you know, you're doing the right thing by your couples. People are noticing. So all I can say is play a long game. You know, like we're not here, like, yes, we're sailing on a sea at the moment, and we're going up and down with the waves, and that's all, you know, I think that's kind of what we're going to have to do. And some of these we're going to win, and some of these we're going to lose. And for me at this moment in time, I would be flexible and let them move the date, because I just don't, like, you know, I can appreciate it from their point of view as well.
Yeah, I can't remember who we were speaking to a couple of weeks ago, but they said kind of put in place some policies around postponement. So you can do one postponement to a weekend, so Friday, Saturday, Sunday on the most popular days, free of charge. Anything after that, there'll be a charge incurred unless you start looking at other days during the week, which are not traditionally days that you would be married on, because they're a little bit more flexible then with time. So that's a really it's not easy, interesting thing to toy with that idea as well, kind of putting some rules around it when you can. But I think it's a case by case with it, you know, depending on the person that you're speaking to. I think you have to kind of just work with what your gut tells you what to do a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think as well, because you're dealing, what we've been finding is because our couples are dealing with 20 different suppliers, it's quite hard for me to enforce some of these policies. So sometimes I will put a policy in place, you know, for example, okay, if you had a winter wedding, you can move to a winter wedding because you've got a discounted winter price. But then it is tending to be case by case, because sometimes it can be a good client and I'm more flexible.
Yeah, of course. So this is an interesting kind of scenario that Amanda Abbott has shared with us in the chat wall. She said she cancelled a wedding back in November, and the venue is refusing to refund any types of money that were paid of the $7,500. They've noted that if someone books on that day, they will get a full refund due to COVID. And this is obviously not going to be a viable option because it was moved to the 21st of August, which is really soon. I'm so sorry. So she's just wanting some advice as to where she stands, or, you know, ideas of what to do. That's a very tough one.
It's really hard, and we deal with like, I have relationships with a lot of venues, and I'm scared I don't want to say the wrong thing here. To be honest, I wouldn't like to give legal advice. Like, and as you probably heard me say, I'm very much a relationships type of person. I'm all about, you know, long-term relationships. So that isn't what I would do as a vendor. So I'm scared to answer that one, to be honest. I'm going to plead the fifth. Is that what you say?
Yeah, that's right.
But probably maybe, do you get some legal advice? That would be the main one. And then if there is any way that you can postpone rather than cancel, then maybe they'll be more flexible.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think, you know, we kind of mentioned it in the last few webinars, but when you're having these conversations as well, it's easy to be upset and frustrated, and just whatever side of the fence you're on, try really hard to understand what the other side is going through, and just be a human. And often you'll get a far better outcome for both parties if you can just be a little bit more understanding of each other. So I think at this point we're going to get to some questions that have been sent through the week, and then Rachel has a very exciting announcement that we're going to save to the very end. So very, very happy Friday. So quite a few of these things that we've covered off, and I'll just rattle through them quickly. So the first question was, is it better to have tough conversations on phone, email, text, video call? And I think, is it better to have the tough conversations on phone, email, text message, or video call? I think you said it's definitely more important to have that rapport over the phone, or maybe even over a video call as well, so you can get a gauge of the expressions and the responses of the person that you're talking to.
Absolutely. Don't put it in text or email. It can just be too easily misconstrued.
Yeah, of course, especially when you're heightened and everybody knows what outcome that they want, and kind of it's easy to get misunderstood in text. I'm sure we've all been there. And then we just talked very briefly about having a script for different scenarios. Really important, even if you just jot a few points down before you make that phone call, so you make sure that your objectives are going to be covered during that interaction. We talked about the policies and making them public. I knew that you said that you make sure you write them into the contracts. Is that something that you keep on the website as well, or something that you would ever share on social media? Like, how do you feel about the level of transparency with those policies?
Oh, look, I'm very, like with our COVID policies, we're letting people know they can move the dates and no extra charge. So I'm happy for that information to be out there. In terms of what our couples receive when they book with us, they actually, if they book in person on the night, they sign a piece of paper that has that all outlined there. And things that I want them to know, I'll like actually physically go and write down on it, like underline so they can see it there. And if there's any issues in the future, this is the thing, we don't tend to get too many issues because we do things like underline the points that are important and make sure that they realise those when they're signing. You can definitely put it on your website, and then you can also pop it in an email as well. The main thing is that if you do put in an email and you put it in a website, they're probably not going to notice it and not going to read it. So keep in mind, what is the purpose of having the policy? And it's to stop issues down the track. You want them to know what the policy is, so that then they don't come back asking for a deposit refund. They don't come back asking to change the date if that's not what you want them to do. So be really clear with your policy, and don't just, yes, put it in the email, but highlight it. Tell them again, if the purpose of having the policy is to stop issues from arising, not to cover your butts, and because that's where your issues rise. Let's try and stop the issues from arising in the first place, because they know when they booked with you, that was the policy. And yes, now obviously this is a difficult time because those policies weren't in place to begin with. But if you are having those date change policies, things like that, don't hide the information. Make it really visible and tell them, because that way it'll stop the issue from occurring in the first place.
Yeah, awesome. I love it. Transparency is very, very important. Okay, the next question. This is a bit of a hairy one. I don't have the money anymore to refund the deposits that I'm being asked for. What do I do? And is this happening a lot, or is it just me?
Negotiate. That's what 100% I would do. So think about what is the best outcome, and think about other ways in which you could serve your couples as well. Is there an alternative service that you can provide them with? So a lot of our couples will be, let's give the example of a florist potentially whose wedding, the couple might be getting married now, the wedding's not going ahead. Chances are they get married and maybe have babies, or have some kind of a future celebration, or have a need for flowers in the future. Can you negotiate and give them, a 50% deposit now, and then 50% of the deposit in a gift voucher that can be redeemed in future? Of course, you know, there are the things you can do, like take out loans and do all those things, and you can also go down the avenue of legal, you know, and then, you know, hold fast on your policy. It's just hard to do. So I would suggest that the first step would be to negotiate and see if you can come to an outcome that benefits both of you.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic idea. All right, moving on, because we are almost at the top of the hour. And we've got some very important things to get through. So let me go down. What have we got? One of the last questions is: we have transfer fees that are part of a wedding contract, but nobody seems to think they should apply for them during the time of COVID. What are your thoughts on this?
So that was existing in the policy.
Mm-hmm.
Look, and this is where it's going to come down to the wording of your policy, because if it was a transfer because of change of mind as opposed to a transfer because of government restrictions that don't permit the wedding to go ahead, you know, there's two really, really different scenarios there. Again, I would just go back to saying this is a long-term approach. Yes, you can hold firm and require the transfer fees to apply, but if your couples are coming back to you saying that they don't think they should apply, I really encourage all vendors to think of this in a long-term approach. Everyone is in the same boat. I get it that you know, when you're an individual employee, like when you're an individual person, you can only do one wedding on that day. And because we were in exactly the same boat. We're losing couples and losing bookings next year because we're booked out on that date. Whereas if COVID hadn't have happened, we could have taken an extra wedding. Everyone is in the same boat. From my experience, what I have found in the industry is that everyone seems to be taking the same approach, which is not to charge transfer fees. So if you do charge them, you are really running a risk of generating not goodwill for your brand. If that's something that you're happy to risk, then that's fine. But all I can do is speak from my experience and say that as someone who's been in the industry for 18 years, things like this happen, and your brand is the most important thing. Right now, we've never been referred more. We are getting planners, we are getting florists, we're getting venues. People are referring their clients to us because they know that they can trust us to take care of them. Your referrals and your brand, that is what matters most, in my opinion, not a transfer fee. That's just my opinion.
No, I think that's great, and I think the fact that we're having these conversations gets people just thinking, just gets the cogs spinning a little bit more, and just thinking, oh, I have a transfer fee, and I have been charging that. Maybe there's a different way of looking at it. So I think this is fantastic.
I think as well, have a look at what the other competitors in your industry are, you know, in your particular area are doing, and if you find that it's something that you can do and it's not a problem for you, then bonus, that's awesome. Keep going with it. Don't stop. But I'm just saying, just think about, you know, what's the possible detriment versus the possible gain, and think about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from a very marketing point of view, kind of how are you differentiating yourself to your competitors or someone who's doing something quite similar? This is when we have the time available to sit down and really start kind of doing the stalking on our competitors. They're things that we should be looking at. Like, it's not just like how great do the grams look in comparison. It's the actual kind of getting back into the details and the admin side behind the business. That's a really great point of differentiation as well. All right, so just a couple more questions. So Rachel, how do you react to the question, what if my allowable reception numbers are reduced by government decree so that I had to substantially cut my reception numbers below 70? Can we postpone without a transfer fee? I think this is very similar to the last.
Yeah. Well, look, we're seeing our couples going through that at the moment. The experience in Sydney is that people venues seem to be allowing it. Yeah, and with the venue, we're definitely following the lead of the venues. So if they need to postpone because of that reason, no, we're not charging a transfer fee.
Sure, that's great. And then I think we've got two more, and then we're going to get into some more exciting
I
stuff.
actually really like Maria's question. I can see over there, and it's
Oh,
something that that's a hard one too. I've had to reschedule a couple. We lost all of ours until September, so we start again on about the 6th. So same boat. I haven't charged extra, but I know there will be ingredient costs that will increase by then. How do I approach them to understand and ask for an updated cake price? That's a really tricky one, and it's something that I've been thinking about as well, because our costs are definitely increasing, and yeah, and compared to what we're charging now, it's a real problem going forward. I think for a lot of us that maybe hasn't even been thought of yet, because the cost that we're going to have to pay to do the wedding is now going to be higher than the price that we've included in our contract. And in the same way that we're holding them to the deposit, well, we've said that we'll do the job for this price. I would sort of look at ways in which you can change your offering. So maybe you stack up a different package. So if, for example, they have a package that includes A, B, and C, and they're going, right, well, I've booked package A. Is there a way that you can then recommend or suggest a more enticing package, which is package B? And that will then have some more bells and whistles in it that doesn't cost you too much more, but adds a lot more value to them. So maybe in the scenario of cakes, maybe it's some kind of a, and I'm making this up off the top of my head, but maybe it's, like if you go to package B, then you not only get the cake on your wedding day, maybe you get some other kind of additional cake for your first, for the party the next day. There's some kind of, but if there is a way that you could stack up a really appealing package B that you can then, that is like so amazing that you're like, man, they'd be crazy not to jump into that. Couples love socials. Is there some way that you can include a social element to it? So it's not only the cake, but maybe the cake gets photographed or something like that. I don't know. But if there's a way that you can stack up a package B that's so amazing that you can encourage them to increase their package too, that will then get you that profit back, that's probably what I would suggest there.
Yeah, that's such a tough one. But I know that it's kind of come up in conversation, but do I stick with the prices for now just to hold on to the business? And I think in that case, the difference of the pricing between years is not going to be the drop dead point that they will take their business somewhere else. I think that people are going to be particularly understanding, and particularly if they've paid their deposit and a large chunk of of the full fee. Now, kind of adding a little bit more in 12 months' time won't be such a hard sell. But that's wonderful. So thank you all so much for your questions. I think this is the most questions that I've seen in the last couple of weeks since I've been running these webinars. Yeah, right. You're in the hot seat. Maybe it is time for a drink. This is great, Rachel. Thank you so much. You have been so amazing. I'm so glad that that your business is still thriving. It's such a beautiful studio. I'm excited to see what you do next, which is a fantastic segue because Rachel has an amazing, exciting announcement for the whole industry. So I'll hand it over to you.
Oh, I'm very excited. I'm releasing my new podcast today. So it's something I've been wanting to do for ages, and through my RachelEnlighten.com website, I love just basically working with other creative entrepreneurs, and right now sales has never been so important, and you can hear how much I love sales. I just absolutely love chatting with couples. I love getting to understand how I can serve them better, what products I can offer, what services I can do to basically give them the best experience possible. So I've just finished recording a 10 episode podcast. You can find it, it's called Wedcast. It's on the Podbean distributor, but I'll send you through the link and everything. And the first 3 episodes are released. And the first one talks about how to convert an inquiry into a full sale. So getting that conversion process, everything that comes after social media. How do you follow up with an inquiry? How do you get them to come in and meet with you in person? And then how do you close the sale? So that's what the first one's talking about. The second one is all about how to create your pricing and packaging strategies. How to get different pricing that makes them want to upgrade to that next level like we just talked about. And the third one that's being released so far is all about the in-person sale, or the in-person experience. So if you if part of what you do is have someone come into your space, how do you take them through the process, make sure that you get all the information out to them and make it as easy as possible to close that sale for you as well. So it's just something that I felt really passionate about, because look, there's business planning, there's lots of things we could chat about, but right now we all need money in our bank accounts. So I really just wanted this one to focus just on sales. And everyone gets so scared of the word sales. Sometimes I think of it as serving, you know, like if you are doing your job really well and you are serving your couple and giving them everything that you can to make their experience as amazing as possible, that's really heading in the right direction. So I'll send you the link and you can all jump on and have a little listen.
This is so exciting, and it sounds like just what everybody needs a bit of at the moment. It's fantastic that's available on a podcast. So for the entire 60 minutes of walking outside the real out every day is a great time to be listening to a podcast. I know that I certainly do it myself. But this has been great. Thank you so much, Rachel. Best of luck with your podcast. I will be sending the links to the podcast and to Rachel's social media and website through an email this afternoon with a replay of this website and some other resources, talking a little bit more about the legal contract side of the postponement policies and deposits from a webinar that we had a little while ago. So thank you everyone, particularly Rachel, for joining us today. Have a wonderful, safe, healthy weekend, and we'll see you back here at 10 a.m. next Friday for our next live Q&A. Have a wonderful weekend. Goodbye.